HMPV, or the human metapneumovirus, is one of the respiratory viruses that is already well known. It has been detected for at least for the last 20 years or so. Of course, after COVID, what has happened is that surveillance has improved. Our diagnostic capacity has improved. And so we are able to pinpoint very quickly, what the virus is. But generally speaking, it also causes upper respiratory infection. So cold, cough, and feeling of, throat irritation, running of the nose, etc. In certain situations, especially in very young children under the age of 1 year, or in older people, let's say over the age of 70, or in people who have underlying infections, already have a problem with your lung or the heart, any viral infection for that matter, any respiratory viral infection can cause more severe disease. It can cause pneumonia. And this is why we've heard about these two infants in Bangalore that have been, tested and found to have HMPV. But actually, ICMR has been running this surveillance, and they've tested about 100 or so people who have respiratory infections, some of them severe, some of them with influenza-like symptoms. And basically, they found that it accounts for about 3% of the circulating viruses just now. The others are influenza A, H5N1, influenza B, as well as respiratory syncytial virus and the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So all these are circulating in the community now. Go up and down. In some months, there's more of SARS-CoV-2 in some places. In some months, the HMPV may be more. So, of course, it's important to do that kind of surveillance and to keep track of what all infections are circulating in the community, so that doctors are also aware and people are also aware. Now, for all of these viral infections that you mentioned, there is no specific treatment or antiviral drug. It is basically what we call symptomatic treatment. You treat the symptoms. If there's fever, you take paracetamol. For nasal congestion, you do steam inhalations and throat gargles and drink soothing liquids, hot liquids, take rest, wear a mask, when you go out. Don't give the infection to other people. Try to avoid crowded places. And wash your hands because, it's a droplet infection. So again, it can spread from droplets, and so hand washing is important. So basic respiratory hygiene and hand hygiene is important. In large parts of Southeast Asia, you will find that in the winter months, people regularly wear masks. They don't even go out without wearing a mask. It's a really good habit because it stops you from getting other people's infections and it stops us from giving it to other people. So those are the basic precautions that we would take, and there's really nothing to panic about just now. As I just mentioned, anyone is at risk, So you or I or anyone can pick it up if we are in contact with somebody who has this infection. Just like we pick up a cold. You go and sit with someone who's coughing and, 2 days, 3 days later, you have symptoms. So this is how you pick it up. But the thing is, most of us will recover, right? If you're healthy, you get a cold and cough, you do recover in a week. Like they say, if you take medicines, you'll recover in 7 days. You don't take any medicines, you'll recover in a week. That's a typical viral infection. But if you are a small baby, your airways are narrow. And so what happens is any respiratory infection leads to more of mucus secretions, and that in turn blocks the airways because of the inflammation. That causes more lower respiratory symptoms. So what is normally an upper respiratory infection can become a lower respiratory infection, bronchiolitis, bronchopneumonia or pneumonia. And then, of course, you might need hospitalization if the symptoms are severe. So extremes of age, very old and very young people, those who are immunocompromised and those who have underlying severe lung or cardiac infections may get more severe symptoms. But that's true for all respiratory viruses, including influenza and SARS-CoV-2. So nothing very unique for HMPV. There's no vaccine available, and as I mentioned, there is no specific antiviral drug either. Now, the WHO has put out a list of priority pathogens. These are virus families that can cause severe human disease, can potentially cause future outbreaks and epidemics. And the hope is that globally, scientists in the public and the private sector will work together and develop countermeasures. So countermeasures includes diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines against these groups of pathogens, or we can call them as prototype vaccines for prototype pathogens. That is the kind of preparedness that we need to do in case we ever have any of these known or a new virus coming from one of these families, like SARS-CoV-2 came from a coronavirus family. Because scientists had been working on coronavirus vaccines for other coronaviruses like SARS-1 and MERS, they were able to quickly actually make a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. So it's very, very important that research and development efforts are made to develop these kind of vaccines and keep them in the lab somewhere, so that if at all there is a serious outbreak, I mean not for HMPV, but in the future, if there is a new virus or a re-emerging virus or something that mutates and becomes serious, you have in labs around the world potential to develop a vaccine quickly, in a very short period of time. So that is what is pandemic preparedness all about, and we need to strengthen research efforts to do that. HMPV is not like COVID at all. COVID was a new virus. The SARS-CoV-2 virus was new. The human population had never been exposed to that virus, and therefore we were all susceptible. We got the infection. And again, in the majority of cases, it was mild. But of course, because it became a pandemic, it took a big toll in terms of deaths and in terms of morbidity. The HMPV is not new. So it's been circulating. Human population has seen it. We have antibodies to it. Of course, we can get infected. It's not known to be a very severe virus. It's like any other respiratory virus. So I don't think we should start comparing it to COVID, because that really starts then creating panic, in the minds of people. It is nowhere close to what COVID was.